Welcome everybody to Ask the VC, the show where I ask the VC questions. My name is Jeff Ransdell from, what else would it be really? Fuel Venture Capital. Jeff, how's your week going? How you been?
Everything is going fantastic, Spencer. How have you been? I see you're not wearing a sweatshirt. That means it's getting warmer up there in Michigan. I'm glad to see that. It makes me happy.
It is. Yeah. It is. We are past winter. It did snow last week, right? That was last week, right, Randy? Yeah, it snowed. That was last week. That was last week's problem. No.
I don't know how many times I have to offer this up, but you are welcome to come and hang out at the fuel station, hang out with all these creators, and do a live show down here. It doesn't snow here ever, that I know of, anyway.
Yeah, no, it's true. That's true. I'll have to take you up on that offer. Okay, Jeff. We've discussed several themes of interest to you. We've spoken about music streaming, and the investment opportunities there. We've spoken about fintech and the investments there. Today, we're talking all about telehealth, telemedicine, whatever you want to call that. Why is this an area of interest to you, both in the public and private markets?
Yeah. So again, I kind of piggybacking off of these themes that you and I have been talking about. The whole idea here is to give our listeners an idea of how a private investor looks at these companies that eventually end up in the private markets, and how our listeners can take advantage of that. So why am I bullish on telehealth? I think it's just makes all the sense in the world. Before COVID hit, this was a theme that was starting to increase significantly. Again, we've said it a couple of times on other things, but this iPhone is changing everything in how we as human beings interact with the world around us on a daily basis. We are beginning to become, a 60-second universe, where in 60 seconds, if I don't have exactly what I want, I start getting pissed off. So why in the world do I want to get into a car, drive all the way to a doctor's office, a hospital, find a place to park, walk, God knows how far, to get into a waiting room and sit there for another hour before someone can talk to me? It doesn't make any sense in the world that we live in, and it doesn't make any sense in the world we live in with respect to technology. So even before COVID hit, I was bullish on this particular space. We've also talked about my belief system that to find and identify investment themes where creators of technology can take advantage of tracks and foundation that has already been built by major organizations and companies. We've talked about a few times. Another reason why I like telemedicine, telehealth. There's a lot of obviously very big companies that have been in this space for a long time. They've laid down a lot of foundation, a lot of tracks, and now creators are coming in and making it more efficient and more effective. COVID hit, obviously, March of 2020. The world shut down. No one could go to the doctor. No one could go and get a checkup or anything else, and everything moved to our computers, doing what you and I are doing right now. We're having a conversation about investing in telemedicine and telehealth. You're in Michigan and I'm in Miami, but a doctor can do this as easily as you and I are talking about investments. So I'm a big fan of this space. I think it's going to be growing significantly. I think that there's a lot of room left in this space. I think that there are companies that are out there that we're going to talk about today. Some of these are priced, they're pretty hefty tickets, but I think that there's a lot of room left in all of them.
Yeah, well, that's one of the questions that we're going to get to, right? Is valuations, because to be frank, as you just said, some of these things had huge runs in the last year and are well off those highs now. But we'll get to that. Let's start with overall. I'll ask you the same question I asked you the last few times, which is how do you look at this space? If you're looking at telemedicine and the major players, to your eye, whether it's public or private, or just overall, who are the major players and who has the power in this industry?
Well, I think the players are going to be your traditional, the ones that oftentimes insurance companies are obviously major players, and obviously are going to benefit even from the technology. There's Teladoc, which is actually one of the very first telemedicine companies that have come out. It's the oldest. It came out in 2002, doing some incredible things. They have 54 million members in their cohort. I think that they're obviously, because they have the scale that they have the ability to iterate. That's another thing that you and I have talked about a number of times, trying to identify, the players in the space that have a tremendous amount of scale. It allows them to figure out different things and move into those areas very effectively, simply because they have the money to do it. So I'm a big fan of Teladoc. I think if we have investors that are looking to get into the space, I really don't think you can go wrong. If you're looking at the chart in front of you, you can see that right now it's from its high, you're getting in at a pretty good number. And again, if you believe in the overall investment theme 5 years from now, where is this baby at? I'm telling you, I think it's going to play, big dividends for anyone who gets in.
What is the driver here? I guess, is it as much demographics? Is it as simple as demographics, or is it more about just like you said before, all of our lives are going online anyway, right? So why not this? But it seems to me like demographics would be a big part of this as well.
I think demographics plays a big part of this. We do have an aging population. It is getting more difficult for people to get around. That's why, as a private investor from a venture capital perspective, how I'm playing this theme is I like investing in what, and we've talked about this before, but, the companies that benefit from these bigger companies that are paving the way. I like to think of it, you always see it on television, they show this great big whale in the ocean, and there's all these little tiny fish that are stuck to that whale. They're getting a free ride and they're eating off of that whale, right? And I like that. I think it's a smart way to invest, right? Find a big company like Teladoc, and then, how can we benefit from what they are paving? So, like, one of the things that I'm a big believer in right now is the robotics play. Utilizing robots to be able to, show up at a doctor's office, to be able to have a conversation in person. I mean, there are doctors that are performing surgeries from the other side of the planet, right? Utilizing robots and utilizing technology. So I think, it's a great opportunity to spin off and do other things.
And it's a great point that Hertz Scrambler brings up in the chat, and you see it up on the screen. Teladoc does report earnings tonight. You can see here their history of earnings as a public company. If I sort it by date, there we go. So they're not yet profitable. And so I don't know how much that really matters, but we do obviously want to see that top line revenue growth. So about $452 million is your consensus estimate for the revenue for Teladoc last quarter. Let's see what the numbers are going to be tonight after the close. Obviously, Jeff, you're saying this, you don't care so much how they did last quarter. You're playing, this is for you is more of a long-term theme, but nonetheless, people still may find this interesting, especially given the fact that Teladoc is way off its highs from earlier in the year, as is every other growth stock, to be frank. Okay, Teladoc is one that everyone knows. Go ahead. Yeah,
Teladoc's one that everyone knows. But just because you're going down this route, and I think it's important that, again, I think my presence on your show is to give you an alternative thought process. Yeah. And, we talk about, the earnings and those types of things. But remember this and write it down. Disruptive innovation is often not priced correctly by traditional traders, by traditional investors. And the reason for that is because most traditional investors do not understand the underlying technology, so they do not understand the ultimate upside. And we can go back in time. I can give you case study after case study after case study. We've talked about things like Amazon. Where did Amazon go? One of the reasons why Teladoc is down is because a couple of weeks ago, Amazon Care came out, and everyone thought, oh, hey, Amazon's now going to gobble up this particular industry. And that's why this company is down. But in my personal opinion, I don't think that the Amazon Care is going to ultimately, fundamentally change the trajectory of this particular company. So I want to throw that out.
No, it's a great point. A question from Boss Trading, and I was going to ask one, but I'll go here. I'll go back to the chat first. Wants to know, what is the business model of a company like Teladoc? I mean, how do they even make money? And I'm not being smug. I don't know that.
Well, it's exactly like, if I have to go directly to a physician. The only difference is I'm saving myself money by using, technology. I don't have the brick and mortar that I used to have. The business model is just simply convenience. It's allowing people who might not otherwise be able to get to the doctor because maybe they don't have, you talked about demographics earlier. Maybe they don't have the access to a car. I know most of us take that for granted, but there are a lot of people in the United States and elsewhere that do not have access to transportation. And so it's a pain in the butt, to get on, 3 or 4 different subways or 3 or 4 different buses. Sure. If I don't even have to leave the living room and have a doctor have a conversation with me like you and I are right now, that is a huge business model. I mean, if we just focused on that alone, we really don't need to go much farther than that. And you can expand that, obviously, much greater than how we're discussing it now.
It's a SaaS model, is what the DD says. That's what I didn't know. But like, what about like when I think healthcare, all I think about is like bureaucracy, right? And like it's so complicated, and that's enough to scare me off, honestly, because it's like who the hell knows what's going to happen on the regulatory front when it comes to healthcare. It's just so complicated in this country. How does that factor into your equation here? It must factor in somehow.
It does, and everything that you're saying there is true. I do think that what happened with COVID is going to remove some of those bumpers and barriers and risk factors that you just mentioned, because it's already been proof source, right? So many people had to depend on telemedicine and telehealth in 2020. And you and I have talked about this before over the music habits and rituals, and also fintech. We have created new habits and new rituals, and they're going to be difficult for people to break because they've become so efficient for all of us, right? It just makes life easier. And so, yes, it is a little bit of a hairy place. There is a lot of bureaucracy, but at the end of the day, I think we continue to see over time that it is very difficult to hold back technological advances. Period. Into discussion. And if you believe that, then again, is it a 48-hour trade? Is it a weekly trade? Is it a monthly trade? Probably not. But if you're believing in where things are going, it's definitely a 3 to 5, maybe even longer. Throw it in your IRA, I guess.
Right. So, okay, beyond Teladoc, though, that's not the only name on your radar. There are other companies, public and private, that you do like. What are some other ones?
Yeah, I like that. You had mentioned it before, right? So there is some hair to this thing. There are some risks. So how do we diversify from our risks? Well, we can get into things like ETFs, and I'm a big fan of ETFs. I know you are. A couple of ETFs that I really like in this particular space. XLV, I think, is a good one. ARK, ARKK. Now, ARK is not just focused on telemedicine and telehealth, more opportunistic things that they think are big plays, but it does hold 6% of its position in Teladoc. So I think that's an interesting ETF that can be played. I'm a big fan of HTEC, which is Robo Global Healthcare Technologies and Innovation. I like this one a lot. The reason I like this one, again, is because I'm an investor in the private sector in the robotics side of this play, and you can get in on the robotic innovations by investing in this ETF.
This was not planned, but I will be speaking with Jeremy Capron, who's the head of research at Robo Global, which is the firm behind this ETF. That'll be tomorrow. That'll be in like 25 hours. It'll be tomorrow. It'll Thursday at like 3:15. So just that, it was a weird coincidence. But I'll be talking to Jeremy more about HTEC tomorrow. And there's another one. There's EDOC, right?
EDOC is good. Yep. I like that one as well.
Top of my head, I don't know that. I don't know if you know. do you know the difference between those two in terms of like what their exposures are, or is it all similar?
Robo Global is going to be not just the telemedicine, but the technologies. Like I was talking about, the free ride on the whale. That's why I like Robo. It's more focused on not just the telemedicine, but the ancillary things that are going to benefit from it, like robotics.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So we've got one stock.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I said EDOC more specifically just on the telemedicine.
We've got one stock, two ETFs. I know there are some companies in the private market that we'll get to. Before we do that, though, are there any other public plays or public companies that would allow you to play this theme?
IRhythm is out there. IRTC.
IRTC.
Yep. And they actually just recently got hammered pretty heavily.
Yeah,
again, you were talking about profitability earlier. A lot of analysts have lowered their expectations. But again, because it's down, it's one of the reasons why I like it. And you've heard me say that a lot as of late, buy on the dips. This company where it was for a reason. It's been pushed down. But again, unless you're in this thing for the short term, I think that it's an interesting play.
Yeah, what happened there? Jeez Louise. If I go to a news IRTC and check it out, oh man, that must have been something. I don't know. I'm just seeing that chart for the first time. If anyone knows, holler at me.
It's an ugly chart.
Cool.
It's an ugly chart, but it allows you to get in at a much lower price tag.
That's the silver lining for sure. More reasonable valuation. Isn't there also a SPAC? Because we have a SPACs Attack show. There is a telehealth SPAC, is there not? I thought there was.
There's a couple of them, and actually the SPAC space has been playing this telehealth quite a bit. More so last year, obviously, with everything going on right now with how the warrants are being traded. SPACs have really slowed down a little bit, and I think that was purposeful, by the way. Which everyone on the call knows. I'm a big fan of the SPACs, especially the technology SPACs. So I definitely would keep my eye open on sponsor SPACs that are looking at this space. And if you go back and even look over the past year at a couple of them that have gone live, they've done very, very well.
There's Solar Open in chat with HIMS, which is Hims and Hers. Let me bring that chart up so y'all can
Hims
see.
and Hers. Yep.
So that one de-SPACed, right? Their post merger there. It's gone full circle. So that's something. I don't know anything about this company. I don't know if you do.
Yeah. So I again, this is one of those opportunities that came out in a SPAC. Not so long ago, and you can see where you can buy in right now. But I think right now they're looking that they have like 3 million visitors to this particular site. And again, we were talking about Teladocs earlier. It took Teladoc something like 12 years to get their first 1 million subscribers, and so this particular company, very short order, 3x that. And I think again that gives you a great indicator as far as where this is all going. I like to look at that, right? So who is the kind of the 1,000-pound gorilla in the space? How long did it take them to get where they're going? That's exponential growth. You and I have talked about this before, right? But it took Hyatt 60 years to get to $1 billion valuation. It took Airbnb, 1 year to do that. That is exponential growth. And so that's the kind of stuff that we're looking for, especially in the private sector, before we let them roar into the public sector.
A couple of more tickers here from chat. Jeff, I don't know if you follow Clover at all. I have a hunch, this is just a hunch, that there are a lot of bag holders in Clover at the moment. This is a high flyer amongst the retail crowd. I don't know if you know much about this.
I don't know a ton about it. I have looked at it, and again, look at that chart and just look at what has happened.
Yeah.
So again, at these prices, and again, if you like the theme, these are companies to do extra due diligence on, because you're able to get in. And again, as a trader myself, volatility is always good for us, right? That's the kind of stuff that we want if we're looking at more short-term trades.
It's true. It's true. I'm also seeing from the chat, SFT is another one, and there's a few more that were mentioned. BXRX was mentioned as well, NXGN, but HIMS was the one I was thinking of that had these SPAC. I'm sure there are other SPACs out there in telehealth, telemedicine.
Definitely.
You have to ask Chris Cauchi from SPAC Stack about that. What about Jeff on the private side of the market? Surely you didn't bring this up at a left field. Surely you have some capital at stake here in telehealth.
We do, but it's as I was saying earlier, it's not a rifle effect. It's more of a shotgun effect. The ancillary business. We are a big investor in a private company at a Silicon Valley called Omni Labs, really getting a tremendous amount of activity. Currently, companies like Target, Volkswagen, Ford, Google, ANA Airlines. I'm not sure if you are familiar with that, but that is Japan's largest airline. I visited with the CEO before I made my first investment in Omni Labs. And he said to me, and I thought this was really interesting, that in the future, his job is not going to be transporting people from one location to another like he does now with an airplane. But his future business will be transporting people from anywhere in the universe. And his goal is to have an Omni Labs robot on the moon. And really what Omni Labs allows you to do is avatar into their robots. So we're talking about telehealth. We're talking about telemedicine. Let's think about what COVID has done to our aging population. I don't know, I had a grandmother who was in an assisted living. I was unable to go and visit her, right? And I think anyone who was on the call knows that, that was just something that they locked down. Any of the assisted living older homes was all locked down. So how do you use technology to affect that? And what a lot of these facilities did is they put Omni Lab robots inside of the facility. And then, you just avatar into the robot. You can go for a walk with your grandmother or your grandfather. You can sit at a table and have dinner with them. Obviously, you can't eat the food, but you can sit there and have a conversation while they're having dinner. You can watch a movie. You can do anything by simply tapping into the avatar. And actually, we, like I said to you before, we have, here in our facility, we're constantly using our different technology. So you can see here, this is one of the Omni Lab avatars.
So explain what that is for me.
Hi, Spencer. So nice to meet you.
Wait. So that
I'm avataring in from San Francisco. Where are you based out of?
Is that a real person?
Yeah, no, it's a real person who's tapped.
Oh yeah. Man!
So that's Olivia. She's in San Francisco.
Okay, hi. I'm in Michigan. I'm in Detroit. Nice to meet you.
So he's in Michigan, and he says it's nice to meet you. I have my headsets on, so she can't really hear you.
Okay, that's way cool. Wait, so so this would be where at like I could buy this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can buy it anywhere.
Man,
you can buy the robots just by you can literally.
Man,
yeah,
crazy.
Yeah, and so we do this all over, right? We have offices in London, we have offices in Israel, we have offices in Latin America, and our partners just simply can be right here in the office, can walk around with us, can do anything that we need to do. Oh, by the way, she's saying goodbye.
Okay, tell her I'm waving. She can see I'm waving, I think. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is one of your portfolio companies, Omni Labs. So just to be clear, this is not a public company yet. But why is that? Why was that of interest to you?
Well, again, because our theme today is to talk about telehealth and telemedicine.
Right.
So one of the biggest things, and I didn't know this, Spencer, one of the biggest issues that hospitals have is the communication and interpretation of language. So especially like here in Miami, right, where white guy like me is a minority. the majority of the people who live here speak, languages other than English. And I guess when you get really sick, what ends up happening is you core back into your traditional native tongue. And so what ends up happening is you could end up in the hospital, and the physician who is caring for you might not understand the language that you're speaking. And so there has always been interpreters that are live in these hospitals. But with COVID, obviously, those interpreters were not allowed to be live any longer on the floors. And so what ended up happening is Omni Labs ended up being that problem solver, right? So the interpreters can be at home. They simply avatar into the robots. They move around the hospital floors with the robots. They sit in front of the patients, and they interpret what the patients are saying to the doctor, and the doctor back to the patient. So that's one of the case studies or use cases. Another use case is our robots can go into rooms using UV lights and sanitize a room before a human being goes in. So there's a lot of use cases like that. Volkswagen, for example, uses our robots for people who are handicapped and they want to go to a soccer game, for example, but they can't, right? Well, now they can. They can simply avatar into our robots, go out onto the floor, meet the athletes, and actually feel like they are at the game. And so for us as private investors, we just simply think that this is a logical play that will eventually work its way into the public markets in a very nice way. And again, this is the ancillary ways to profit off of this particular investment theme that is going gangbusters.
So just so I can wrap up, because I have a hard stop at 2:30 here. So you're bullish telemedicine, telehealth, and more importantly, the ancillary plays around it, not so much, well, maybe like the core plays like Teladoc, for example, but also the companies that are providing the tech to facilitate telemedicine, and maybe not the Teladocs necessarily. It's just the companies around it.
Yeah, Spencer, I actually like that better because as you were saying earlier, the space can be bureaucratic. So if you don't like that, right? And I agree with you. I'm not a big fan of that. But there are a tremendous amount of young technological companies that are going to take advantage of the foundation and the tracks that have been laid by these bigger companies, and you can get in fairly cheap, and I think you'll do very well. I think it's a great point. And by the way, one of our listeners is saying that I need the robot to fetch me a beer. Now that's not very health wise, right? We want you to be moving your body, but the Omni Labs robots, by the way, do come with arms. They're quite a bit more expensive, but you can absolutely do that.
And then the other thing to think about really is we talk about structural changes in society coming from traumatic events, and we had a traumatic event last year, right? And there are going to be structural changes from that. And maybe we're going to look back in 5-10 years and say, oh, in hindsight, telehealth was around before last year, but the COVID was the obvious Kickstarter, and just
completely
threw this into overdrive. So maybe that'll be
completely threw it into overdrive. And don't discount the mental health issues that these ancillary companies like Omni Labs fixes. I mean, that is a big play, right? If you are older than average, or you are handicapped in any way, but you can go to the museum by tapping into a robot and walk around the museum as though they're there. And by the way, we have Omni Labs, robots in a lot of art galleries around the United States whose businesses just basically shut down. And they came to us and said, hey, can you help us? And we said, absolutely, we can. And art buyers all over the world who are sitting at home, looking at their walls and saying, well, how do I get some inspiration? I personally have some good friends who sold a lot of art using our robots, and that's a part of that mental health piece that I'm talking about.
Again, so it's just to answer from the chat, Omni Labs is private. It's up on the screen there. But Jeff Ransdell is managing partner of Fuel Venture Capital. You can follow him on Instagram. There it is, at Jeff Ransdell VC. You can follow his firm at Fuel Venture Capital. And that's a wrap. So Jeff, always a pleasure, guys. this is something we don't. This is different, right? This is different than our usual programming. It's not really about the market. It's not really about tomorrow or next week. We're looking at longer term, and I like that. So smash the like for Jeff. Jeff, thank you so much, and I'm gonna beat you to it. Have a legendary day, sir.
I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks, Spencer. Have a legendary week.
All right, guys, smash the like for Jeff. I'm gonna get off the stream here. We've got an interview coming up right now with Fire and Flower. We've got a first trade after that, and then the At the Close show. So I'm going to be signing off for now. Smash the like for Jeff Ransdell, and I'll see you guys for At the Close in 1 hour.